Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Angel August. The issue I identified in this scenario is one of my officers confided in me that a sergeant was making her feel uncomfortable by making suggestive comments, showing suggestive pictures, as well as rubbing up against her. My goal is to protect my subordinates and lead, counsel, and coach my peers and officers into upholding the guiding principles of our department. Immediately upon being notified by the officer of the issue, I notified my lieutenant of the situation and got confirmation that I was authorized to enforce interim shielding for the officer. I then contacted the employees relations section from the alternative dispute resolution unit and notified them of the workplace misconduct that was occurring at my station. Because of my internal affairs experience, I knew that this was a serious issue, a serious accusation, and we needed to immediately act to make sure that all parties were safe. Next, I wanted to meet with the officer privately. So I sent her to a private office and told her to wait for me. Prior to meeting with her, I pulled her JPRs, her personnel file, her department resume, and any disciplinary action she had, just so that I could familiarize myself with the officer's background. I also notified my lieutenant of the sergeant's identification so that he could act and enforce the internal affairs issues on his side. I then met with my officer and I explained to her that she did the right thing, that I was very proud of her for showing the strength to come forward and not just take something that was making her feel uncomfortable and just trying to work through a very unhealthy environment. So I was very proud of her for taking the stand to do this. I also explained to her that this case would remain confidential because of the sensitive issue that is occurring. I also explained to her that this was a workplace misconduct and not sexual harassment because of the suggestive comments, the suggestive photographs, the rubbing up against her. Those all fall into our department's category of workplace misconduct. I then advised her that she would be shielded for an interim time period and explained to her that interim shielding means that we're just removing her from facing her peers, sergeants, lieutenants, and interacting with them on a daily basis until this is taken care of. At the department level, when we enforce interim shielding, it's usually behind a door, closed door that the average officer, sergeant, or lieutenant won't have access to. So this is usually in the administrative part of the station or in the commander's office. I explained to her that it would be temporary until the ERS unit section would come up with a more permanent position for her safety, just for her peace of mind, until the investigation had been concluded. Next, I asked her if she was okay and if she needed to talk, that I was here. I offered myself as a friend, as a confidant, as an ear that she could talk to, because this situation, to experience this not only at work but as a female, when you just want the respect of your supervisors and your peers, it's a hard thing to have to go through. I then offered her, explained to her that not only am I a resource, but we also have peer support. We also have psych services, and we have HOPA out of our union, which is retired officers that volunteer. They've been through the things that we experience now. Additionally, you have the counseling outside of the department by utilizing our insurance. Next, I spoke to her and we agreed a plan of monitoring. This monitoring would just be me checking in on her daily. Usually it's going to be before my roll call to make sure that she's okay, just to make sure that her day is going fine, that she's having an okay day, and if she needs help. And we're going to do this until the end of the investigation. Afterwards, I commended her once again on her strength as being a great officer and being a great role model by showing in people that you could stand up for yourself and still have the respect and integrity and the loyalty of your fellow officers. I then explained to her that we would contact her when it was time to meet with the ERS, that I would provide her contact information to them. I then showed her to her new location so that she wouldn't have to walk to the office by herself. And I provided her with my contact number so that if she needed to call me on my personal phone at any time that she could. Next, at the end of that, I documented everything with all my actions that I took, and I notified my lieutenant of the actions that were taken and the situations of where we were at this moment. In summary, one of my officers confided in me that a sergeant was making her uncomfortable by making suggestive comments, as well as showing her suggestive pictures and rubbing up against her. I immediately notified my lieutenant and the employee relations section of the ADR unit of the situation and got authorization to implement interim shielding for the employee. I then met with the employee privately. We discussed the situation. I explained that it is workplace misconduct, and we agreed to put into place a daily monitoring where I would check in with her daily just to make sure she was okay and how she was progressing in her temporary position. And we would do this until the end of the investigation. I then escorted her to her new position to make sure she was okay, and for her not to have to be by herself in the hallways to interact with peers and sergeants and lieutenants. I then documented this by creating and maintaining a documenting working file, and then I updated my lieutenant on the actions that I had taken. This concludes my scenario.